very recent production Blues Junior. Came in with the blown mains fuse. The mains fuse blew because one of the EL84s was not heating and the other one was drawing all the current. New match pair of EL84s in. And you hear this hum. The IC filter caps are visibly okay. They are not visibly leaking. Let me get that focus for us. They look okay, but that sound says that they are not okay. This is a matched set of EL84s that are quiet in other amps. And if I ring the master up, you hear that? That's not the tubes, though that one's a little microphonic. It's a little computer interference. I'm having some kind of weird field in here today. It's popped up in some other videos. But aside from the computer noise, that crackle, that's a cap charging and discharging. It's either a bad cap or a bad solder joint or both. So this amp needs to have those blue IC caps replaced, and the amp will probably be very happy at that point. All kinds of stuff I could do to these, but I think I'm just going to try to keep this simple for the owner. Those caps aren't expensive, and I've gotten pretty good at pulling all this and doing it pretty quickly, so it's not a huge repair. But why does Fender hate their buyers so much, their customers so much? They could have spent $3 more per amp and gotten really high quality capacitors, and this would not be an issue. It would have been better for them to have used all radial caps, which would have made this amp even less expensive, and all these common issues would go away. They use these because people want to see blue axial caps in Fenders. It is playing down to their customers, treating their customers like children, rather than saying, hey, to get this to market at a certain price point, we're not going to use blue axial caps. We're going to use high quality radials. Instead, they used these absolute shit quality axial caps that are just happen to be blue. The rest of the ICs I see out there are gray. This is a line I think Fender specs for them, and they're just the cheapest of the cheap, and they always fail, as you can hear. All right, let's do this Blues Junior. I'm probably going to speed some of this up so you can see the whole thing without spending the entire hour and a half with me, unless you want to. Well, I did not film about 15-20 minutes of this that I thought I was filming, where I removed the diodes here. They're 1 in 4006s on the stock board, and those fail. I put in 1 in 4007s. Fender saved half a penny on that. Just ends up costing the owner. And I remove the filter caps, and I remove the screen grid resistors. They use 100 ohm half watts. I put in some 1K 2 watts. And I removed the input jack, and I showed how to do all that, but it wasn't recording, so you don't get to see that. Anyway, the technique that I use for all that is the same technique I will show here for removing R51, which is a 33K resistor, forming a voltage divider in the bias supply. And that divider ratio is wrong, and the output tubes like to roast. That's why you saw me removing the old solder and then resoldering the output tube sockets with some leaded solder. Leaded solder has a much higher melting point and a lot better structural strength than the lead-free stuff in here. So I removed the old lead-free solder from the critical points on the output tube sockets and redid it with Kester 6040, and now I'm going to remove R51. So add just a slight bit of solder the other side. Again, the flux in this fresh solder kind of activates the old stuff. Then I have the resistor snipped into 2 parts, and I can push each one up through, so I'm not stressing out the pad with any mechanical connection to it. There's no abrasion. Nice. On the one which has the resistor body on it, I cut off the excess. And that resistor will just fall right into my hand on the other side. I dropped it, but it fell right out. And on this one, you can see that bend right there. I guess you can see it. Let's see. That kind of hook. That's why I do it from this side. Once it's hot, I can just pull it right out because it's straight on the other side. That way that hook is not, if I pull it from the other side, it'll just damage that trace. So once I get that done, where's my groovy new thing? Here he is. Fresh roll of desoldering braid, no clean, the good stuff. I'll just get that solder right off that pad, and that solder right off that pad. And that's exactly what I did on all the filter caps and everything else. And then once I get that solder off, I've got some flux on the board. And I like to have a nice clean area before I put new stuff in, so. All buttoned up. Haven't bundled up the cables again yet. Did a quick playing, and everything's working except the reverb. So I pretty much know what that's going to be. Got these 3 screws out without incident. This screw is almost impossible to get out because where the speaker is. It's tempting to remove the speaker to do that, but I have this right angle screwdriver It's not the best because I need to get a grinder and grind it down so it's almost flush at that end. Make it a little easier to use. But it does the trick after a matter of speaking. And I got that screw out. So here's the tank. Let's see. Basically, I could tap on the tank and hear reverb, but nothing was going in. And if I look up, there it is. Broken wire. Very common. I'll just resolder that, and then I'll put some silicone in there to help them have some strain relief. And then we should be able to hear this with reverb. What a concept. All right, resoldered, and those little blobs of silicone aren't very lovely, but you won't see them. And it should help give a little bit of extra strain relief. Let's put this back and confirm we have reverb. The amp is working. It's really quiet. It sounds better than a Blues Junior has any right to, and has reverb again. So we do battle with that one difficult screw and get some zip ties in here and put it all back together with the rear panel for the owner on Monday, and the knobs, of course. One little thing I want to point out, let me put the guitar down before I do that. Where's my little pointer thing? Here it is. All right. This blue wire here, if this blue wire is coming in contact with these ribbon cables, or even very close to them, it can cause oscillation. And there are some fixes you could do with capacitors across plate resistors and such in this amp. But first, make sure that there's just some physical distance between this blue primary wire on the output transformer and these ribbon cables going to the output tubes. All right, to recap everything I've done in this amp, I removed the solder joints, the lead-free solder joints from some crucial pins on the output tubes, and I reflowed those with 6040 leaded solder. I removed the 1N4006 diodes in the rectifier, replaced those with 1N4007s. I replaced the half-watt 100 ohm screen grid resistors with 2-watt 1K screen grid resistors. I changed, I think it's R51 in the bias from a 33K to a 24K. It really cools off the bias, makes these things last a lot longer. All the F&T caps were removed, replaced with, did I say all the F&T? All the IC, all the Illinois brand capacitors removed, replaced with F&Ts. There's a lot of stuff on the web, Bill M mods and such that show putting 100 microfarad here for more low end. Well, I hate to break it to you, but that won't give you any more low end out of the amp. You've got a pair of EL84s and a relatively small output transformer. Those are the low end bottlenecks. You'll have a slightly higher B+, which might slightly increase headroom, but it's a really minor difference. And a 450, 100 microfarad cap is a little more expensive and not quite as good as a 500 volt 47. So not to argue with Bill, who has passed, and I think his heart was always in the right place, but that's not a mod I always found particularly useful. I do one thing that Bill M also did, which is change the wiring of the mids pot from being a true potentiometer as in a voltage divider to just being a variable resistor, a varistor. So it just goes straight like it would be in a blackface Fender, which means that when it's below noon, you've got an actual nice usable range to the mids, and it doesn't get weird and funky with the bass control. And then I replaced the crappy plastic input jack with the Switchcraft L12A. And did I do anything else on this? I fixed the reverb tank and replaced the output tubes, which were bad. Other than that, this is pretty much how they could have sounded from the factory if they had used a higher quality filter cap, If they had not wired the middle pot like a bassman, which doesn't do much good with the rest of the tone stack in here, if they had biased it sanely, and if they'd had thicker traces on the output tube sockets, or better yet, used dedicated chassis-mounted sockets for those output tubes. So this is a bit of a heavy-duty Band-Aid compared to changing out for real tube sockets mounted to the chassis, but the holes in the chassis just don't really allow that. And if you saw the one I did a month or so back, there is a board from Doug Hoffman that I can put in these, which gives you much higher quality tube sockets and much more reliable connections. But my God, is that an expensive proposition? I think it's better just to get a different amp than to try to upgrade this in huge fits and starts like that. So I think this high quality Band-Aid is the way to go. Anyway, I think that's it for this amp. I think zip ties and putting the panel back and putting the knobs back won't make for a fascinating video, so I will spare you that.